Who should you be adding and who should you be dropping in your Dynasty League this week? We're talking about that and more on today's episode of Locked On Dynasty.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Here are your hosts, Matt Williamson and Ryan McDowell.
Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On Dynasty your first listen every day. Today's episode is brought to you by the FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Right here, right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets, guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com/locked on to get started. I'm your host, Ryan McDowell. You can follow me on Twitter at RyanMC23. Joining me as always is former NFL scout Matt Williamson. Find Matt on Twitter at WilliamsonNFL. Matt, we've got almost week 2 in the books. We got a couple more games here as we're recording and looking ahead to Monday Night Football, but also looking ahead to week 2 waiver wire targets. Matt, I was looking back at last week's show, and last week might go down as one of the best dynasty waiver wires in quite some time, right? Especially, well, I think we kind of knew that at the time, but even more so, we see Kyren Williams basically get the Rams backfield to himself. We see Puka Nacua setting records 2 weeks into his career. I mean, it goes without saying, if for some reason either of those guys are still out on your waiver wire, they are the top priority. We're not going to talk much about those guys today because, they got scooped up last week, if not even earlier. But both of those players really impressive. And, Matt, we just couldn't have a fantasy football podcast this week and not mention the name Puka Nacua. So we got that out of the way. Let's talk about some players that are still out there potentially on your dynasty waiver wire that you could look to add this week. Matt, we'll start at the quarterback position. And Anthony Richardson, as impressive as he has been through, we can't even say 2 games, a game and a half, almost a game and a half. He's also been injured. He's been banged up. I believe he left week 1's game twice.
Yes.
Certainly left once, and then obviously had the head injury in week 2. Gardner Minshew came in, had a solid game, throws for 171 yards and a touchdown, and the Colts cruise to a victory over the Houston Texans. Obviously, with concussions, it's a bit of a guessing game because sometimes players can get cleared and can be back the next week. Sometimes they do miss the following game, and unfortunately in severe cases sometimes more than one game. So we don't know about the status of Anthony Richardson yet. I think it goes without saying that Gardner Minshew is a quality pickup in those super flex leagues, whether he's playing in week 3 or not. Matt, does what you've seen from Richardson as far as the injuries, as far as inviting these this big contact, does that worry you moving forward with him?
Not yet, because boy, he looks so good. And maybe I'm just looking at the shiny things and not the other side of the coin. But man, like in my main redraft league, as soon as week 1 was over, I had Fields and Richardson. I traded Fields immediately. I'm like, I'm just going to get whatever I can out of him, and I'm going with Richardson. Hopefully that doesn't bite me, week after week if he can't stay on the field. But I like his usage. I don't consider him, quote, injury prone. I mean, who knows? It's just a little fluky way to start a season, adjusting to the speed of the game, taking some big hits. We'll see. But for now, I'm giving him every benefit of the doubt, and he looks like more like a league winner to me.
Yeah, absolutely. Really, really impressive player. Hopefully we see him back out on the field. Just in case, though, grab Gardner Minshew in those super flex leagues. A couple other quarterbacks. We mentioned one of these names last week, Jarrett Stidham. He is, of course, the Broncos backup. Denver paid him pretty handsomely in the offseason to be the QB2 there. And I know Russell Wilson had a solid game statistically, the box score looks nice, but if you watch that game, it was ugly once again. Man, is Russell Wilson going to keep this starting job through the entire season? And if not, how much longer does he have?
Yeah, I mean, at least we saw the Hail Mary at the end that made that thing more interesting than it was, but they squandered a big lead. He's running a little bit more. You got Judy back. They got Mims involved. Man, but you also heard Sean Payton, and this seemed like it was somewhat of an underreported story, insinuate or flat out call out that we're not getting plays related quickly enough and things like that. And that was sort of a thing we heard last year as well. Everyone just blamed the coach, of course, but maybe it's the trend. I would have to think we have to get significantly further down the rabbit hole for Stidham, but there's talent there. That's the guy Peyton picked, and they're 0-2. So certainly he has to be involved in Superflex. We probably already was. The thing is, if Stidham came in, and this is sort of true with Minshew, they're a long way from me starting them in one quarterback leagues.
Oh yeah. In single quarterback leagues, I think this is a super flex only conversation with players in this range. As far as Wilson though, it's funny you point out the play calling, getting the play in, and kind of the speed there. Remember when Sean Payton made those comments criticizing the previous coaching staff, that was part of what he was criticizing, right? The inability to get those plays in, and now ironically Sean Payton dealing with some of those same things. Last quarterback here on the list before we move on, Jake Browning is the quarterback 2. He is the backup in Cincinnati. We saw Joe Burrow with another rough game in week 2 against the Baltimore Ravens. We also saw him reportedly aggravate that leg injury that he dealt with in the preseason. So his status moving forward is certainly up in the air. I mean, I'm not excited about Jake Browning by any means.
No.
If Joe Burrow wasn't performing well with this offense, I don't know that Browning would do, would even be worthy of a roster spot, honestly. But we know how those super flex leagues are. Any quarterback with a pulse, any quarterback certainly in a lineup matters in some cases. So just putting that name out there, that's one to watch. I would definitely prefer Minshew if we were really desperate in week 3.
It wouldn't blow me away if Burrow missed a little time, though. I mean, so therefore, in these deep super flex leagues, you got to have guys like him.
Last thing here on the quarterbacks, I don't have a specific name, but I want to ask you about the situation. We saw the Jets, as expected, struggle in week 2, put up 10 points against the Cowboys. Man, that Dallas defense looks amazing. But we heard the comments from the coaching staff last week that they were rolling with Zach Wilson. He's their guy. They're not looking for an upgrade there. I wonder if that changes, and are there any quarterbacks that you think make sense to target in a possible trade for the Jets that maybe we should be targeting right now? Thinking like Jameis Winston, maybe.
Winston's up my alley, but my problem with Winston is in order for the Jets to have a successful season, they're going to have to run the ball, protect the football, play defense. And he doesn't really fit that script. Like a Minshew seems to make more sense, but he's not going anywhere now. Cousins seems like too big a fish to go after contractually. I feel like Carson Wentz should be in your Superflex league, though.
Oh, wow. Yeah, well, of course, the big difference for the Jets and the thing that makes it a lot easier is Wentz is a free agent, right? They don't have to trade for him. They don't have to give up anything as they would for Winston, as they would for Jacoby Brissett, or I even heard Minshew's name mentioned as a trade candidate, just as far as somebody throwing that out on Twitter. I don't know that those make sense, but yeah, Carson Wentz available, maybe so.
Yeah, bring him in, see what he can do.
Matt, when we come back, we'll continue talking about some waiver wire targets. We've got some old running backs. We've got some young wide receivers. Those are the choices that dynasty managers will be facing this week. We'll do all that right after this.
So True story. Just right before we hit record, my wife has worked from home. I was talking to her upstairs. I was telling her about our new partnership with Jace Medical. Told her to keep an eye out for packages being delivered because I ordered mine right away. And she mentioned, she said, we have this family camp we go to all the time. It's in the middle of nowhere. And she's like, that's perfect for us. We go there several times a year, whether we're helping us or other families that are there. We can whip out the Jace case and help somebody before we get them to a hospital, or not even take them to a hospital or whatever. So the Jace case that I just referenced has 5 life-saving antibiotics for emergency use. All it takes to get a Jace case is fill out a simple form online, and I did it honestly in like 60 seconds. Some cases you have to jump on a quick call with one of our board-certified physicians. I didn't have to. Get ongoing care from our physicians from any treatment-related questions. Doctor created, doctor recommended. So as I mentioned, you don't want to be unprepared in a situation like I talked about. Everyone should be empowered to care for themselves and their loved ones during the unexpected. And Jace handles everything from online evaluations and licensed pharmacy medication delivery and ongoing consultation and care. So with storms, shortages, pandemics, reliance on China and supply chain issues, we need to be prepared now more than ever. And Jace Medical is simple. You go online, fill out a form, and then you get prescription life-changing medications right to your door. The Jace case gives you peace of mind, so you're not just hoping that you have access to medication in an emergency. You make sure you have the medication at hand. So save more than $360 by getting these life-saving antibiotics with Jace Medical, plus an additional $20 off by using our code LOCKEDON at checkout on jacemedical.com. That's JASE medical.com. Use our promo code LOCKEDON. Now, I've also told you quite a bit about FanDuel. So we are now right in the teeth of the NFL season, and there's some incredible offers from FanDuel. That's America's #1 sports book, as I'm sure you know by now. But how about this? New customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets, guaranteed. Plus, all customers who bet $5 will get $100 off NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. I mean, that's 2 really good offers all rolled into one. Now is the best time to join FanDuel. The app is easy to use, and you can be on everything from spreads to player props and more. So visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn, FanDuel.com/LockedOn, and kick off the NFL season with an offer you won't want to miss. FanDuel, the official partner of the NFL.
We are back. Let's move over to the running back position. Looking at some possible waiver wire targets. I said earlier, Matt, that these were older running backs, and for the most part, that's what we're dealing with. And unfortunately, in week 2, we saw a couple of injuries that are impacting things. Let's start with the New York Giants. Late in the game, we see Saquon Barkley get rolled up on, tough tackle. We don't have any answers yet as far as his availability moving forward, but the Giants do play on Thursday night. So on top of everything else, they've got a short week to work with. I would be shocked if Saquon Barkley plays on Thursday. I think we could be, hopefully we're only looking at a couple week absence. The names to know here, of course, Matt Breida, the veteran, saw him quite a bit over the past couple of years, and he did enter the game when Barkley suffered that injury. Gary Brightwell, Eric Gray, a couple other names to know. I mean, we're obviously digging deep, but this is what's on the Giants roster right now. Matt Breida, I would imagine, is the guy to have, and pending an update, I think we got to be aggressive to get Matt Breida on our roster. What do you think?
Yeah, Brightwell to me doesn't do anything for me. I did like Gray coming to school, so maybe he gets mixed in or he becomes an injury away from being the guy. But their offense has been pretty up and down. I assume this means more carries for Jones. I mean, I'm totally guessing just watching it live. I think Barkley misses a couple weeks, and definitely, I mean, I'd be really shocked if he plays Thursday. But I'm not going to spend a lot of my fab money on Breida or Gray. I just don't see much there. Maybe I'm missing the boat, and I'm sure there's teams that are in really bad situation with their running back. Fine. I just would have a really hard time starting any non-Barkley Giants running back.
Yeah, that's fair. Let me tell you, man, I'm in this vampire league. You ever done a vampire league?
No, you're in some crazy ones.
I am. So I'm the vampire, and essentially the short version of the story is, I built my team from the waiver wire while everyone else participated in
Oh, okay.
the normal draft. So my team is terrible. I've not come close to winning.
But don't
I
you get a
have
lot of picks or something to be the vampire or something?
you get to steal players. So if you win a game, you get to steal a player from the team you beat. That's
Oh, that's
the
crazy.
allure of
Okay.
yeah. That's the allure of being the vampire. But I will say, I think that league kind of impacts how I view the waiver wire, because I start to get excited about guys like Gardner Minshew and Matt Breida. So
I bet.
I
Okay.
needed that. Yeah, those guys look like look like gold compared to what I'm starting in my lineup, and I think I needed that perspective of, yeah, we're not starting Matt Breida anyway. And you're probably right. Maybe I will in that one league, but in general, even if you get Matt Breida, probably not rolling him out in your lineup
Against the
moving
Niners.
forward.
Right.
So. Yeah. What about Craig Reynolds? This is another injury. David Montgomery suffers the thigh injury. Sounds like he will miss a couple of weeks. And the initial response was excitement to see Jahmyr Gibbs and possibly getting a full workload, but that did not happen. Craig Reynolds saw the red zone work, saw some of that short yardage work, and essentially Jahmyr Gibbs continued the same role he had. Lots of work in the passing game. He did see some increased usage from week one, but I would not credit that increased workload to the Montgomery injury. So is Craig Reynolds a guy you want to pick up and possibly even start?
Possibly. I mean, I think he's an early down back that they trust, which I think that's the key. I just think Gibbs is a trust factor, especially in protection at this stage of his young career and his size, on a really good offense with a really good line, so that might be enough. I mean, if he can get 15 to 20 touches, maybe that's even a little ambitious, that he should be a flex.
Yeah, and you pointed it out there, just the quality of the Lions offense, compared to what we were talking about with the Giants and Breida and Barkley. That is enough to make Reynolds a higher priority here. So good call. Let's go after Craig Reynolds and maybe leave Matt Breida out there, depending on how long Saquon will be out. A couple of other guys to consider here. These are not injury situations, but essentially these players are getting more usage, getting more playing time than maybe expected. The Jets backfield looks like a three-man split. Of course, Breece Hall, Dalvin Cook, we knew those guys would see the field. Michael Carter out there as well. And really, like I said, if you look at snaps, if you look at carries and targets, opportunities, it's a three-way split, which feels pretty gross right now.
That's
but
awful,
Michael Carter may be a guy to look at. Hopefully we continue to see more and more of Breece Hall as he gets back to full health. And honestly, we might see less and less of Dalvin Cook. He's been bad so far. Yeah. James Cook, speaking of the Cook brothers, James Cook had a great game in week 2, but he still did not see that short yardage, that red zone usage. That went to both Damian Harris and Latavius Murray. Both of those guys scored touchdowns. I think this is kind of the best case we can expect for James Cook. Had over 100 yards, caught a few passes, really, really great game. He's not going to get that red zone work. He is not going to score many touchdowns, especially short touchdowns. So both Harris and Murray are worthy of a roster spot at this point.
Yeah, I can't fight you on any of that stuff, including the Michael Carter conversation. Carter, Harris, and Murray, especially Harris and Murray, have had success in this league. I don't think they're washed. I know they love Murray in protection, which is important too.
Couple other names to consider here. Ty Chandler, again, just looking at the starter. Alexander Mattison has not been good. Ty Chandler hasn't seen much of an opportunity yet, but he's the guy I would be stashing. And the Rams situation, we talked about Kyron Williams and Puka Nacua at the top of the show, but the Cam Akers story, we kind of hinted at it last week, that we wouldn't be surprised if he was in the doghouse and maybe even on the trade block again. That's exactly what has happened. Healthy scratch on Sunday. again, Kyron almost certainly gone from your waiver wire. Royce Freeman, Ronnie Rivers are the next guys in line there. And again, we're digging very deep. Just an ugly situation. Maybe Cam Akers lands somewhere, potentially with one of those teams we've already talked about. If Barkley's out a while, maybe they go get Cam Akers. That guy needs a fresh start for sure. Matt, we got wide receivers and tight ends to talk about. Also, a few players that we are going to be dropping from our roster. We're talking about guys we want to pick up. Who are we dropping for those guys? We'll give you some names, and we'll do that next.
So I've told you guys about Prize Picks quite a bit. And once again, I did really well this weekend on Prize Picks. I'm starting to do it heavy and more. I'm going to hit the Monday night games, no doubt about that. And what I love about it is just you against the numbers. I mean, instead of battling thousands of other players and people that do this for a professional, you pick more or less, and you get to pick between 2 and 6 player stat projections. And just all you check is more or less on all those. And so I like that quite a bit. Prize Picks, really simple to play. I make the picks and submit them in less than 60 seconds. Super easy withdrawals. Not all sites like this offer that. Easy gameplay, an enormous selection of players and stat types. And right now it's the #1 daily sports app. Prize Picks offers weekly promotions. They have Taco Tuesday, which you got to hit. I mean, every Tuesday, Prize Picks discount select player projections up to 25% to provide you even more value. There's some of the other things I love about them too is you can turn $10 into 250 with just a couple taps. It's the most fun I've had, winning up to 25 times my money this football season. Just select those 2 or more players, more or less. It's that simple, on their projected stats, and place your entry. Again, super easy to do. So here's what you got to do. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL. Use our code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. So again, go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL. Use LockedOnNFL for the first deposit match, and that's up to $100. Daily fantasy sports made super easy. Prize Picks. You got to check it out.
Matt, let's finish up our waiver wire conversation for week 2 with some pass catchers. And we've got a lot of them, most of them very young. In fact, most of them are rookies. Tank Dell had a great day for the Houston Texans. 10 targets, caught 7 of them for 72 yards and a touchdown. Trey Palmer continues to play the wide receiver 3 role for the Buccaneers, of course, behind Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. We've got a couple of guys to look at in Green Bay, but most notably Dontavian Wicks, who's played a much larger role through the first 2 weeks than anybody expected. Demario Douglas with the New England Patriots. He's had a role both weeks, and honestly looks like he might be the most talented receiver on that team. Yeah. And then Ronnie Bell playing a very small role so far for the 49ers, but he is getting on the field. And we unfortunately saw Brandon Ayuk get a little banged up in week 2. So Ronnie Bell is the deepest of deep stashes, I would say. So Tank Dell, Trey Palmer, Dontavian Wicks, Demario Douglas, and Ronnie Bell. Any thoughts on any of those guys, Matt?
I was out on Dell. Now I'm in on Dell. I think Stroud's a really good matchup for him. There's a slot machine. High volume, moderate to high volume. I think they're going to be losing a lot. I think Houston's going to be really bad this year. I adore Nico Collins, but Tank Dell couldn't be any more different. So he's probably the one most likely to already be in your league from this group, but I think his stock is going up.
Yeah, he's a shallow league target. Those leagues that only roster 20 players. That's where you're going to find Tank Dell. If you've got 22, 24, certainly any more than that, he's already going to be on a roster. But the other guys might still be out there. Palmer, Wicks, Douglas, and Ronnie Bell. Demario Douglas, probably my favorite of those. A little bit of a gadgety guy for New England. And Matt,
he's got juice.
You know who doesn't have juice? Juju Smith-Schuster.
No juice for Juju.
It's over. It's over.
Yeah.
A couple tight ends to look at. Zach Ertz had another strong game. Maybe someone gave up on him this offseason and he hit the waiver wire. He looks like a fantasy starter once again. Logan Thomas took a nasty hit for the Commanders. John Bates was the beneficiary there. He came in, caught 3 balls for 46 yards. And Kylan Granson had another good game for the Colts. He scored and looks like the top tight end for Indianapolis. Look at all those guys. Obviously, Zach Ertz is the priority if he's on the waiver wire. Matt, I teased this. Let's talk about some players that it's time to move on from. These guys are maybe on rosters, but probably don't deserve to be any longer. We saw a couple of running backs who had previously had a role, did not have a role on Sunday. Deontay Foreman for the Bears was a healthy scratch. Deion Jackson for the Colts was active, but not really. He stood on the sideline. I don't think he played a single snap. I'm pretty much done with these guys. What about you?
Yeah, me too. Foreman's out of sight, out of mind. Bad offense, clearly number 3. Frankly, I'm not sure Deion Jackson, he might need to get on with his life work. I'm not sure he's an NFL player.
Oh, man. Some veteran pass catchers that I feel like these guys have had their opportunity, specifically have had their opportunity with some really good offenses and just haven't gotten it done. Van Jefferson, he could have been the wide receiver 1 for the Rams last year. Didn't do it. Could have been the wide receiver 1 for the Rams this year to start the season. Did not do it. I'm done with him. Mecole Hardman played, of course, years and years with Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, was never really a factor there, and now is the 4th or 5th option for a Zach Wilson offense. That's an easy cut at this point. Marquez Valdez-Scantling obviously played with Rodgers, plays currently with Mahomes and still not really a factor. Richie James, another Chiefs wide receiver, and Robert Tonyan still hanging on to a roster spot. Actually, in most of my dynasty leagues, I don't know why though, the backup tight end for the Bears. Matt, any of those you disagree with and anybody else you would add to the list?
I had some hopes for Van Jefferson. I never was a Hardman or MVS guy. Kind of liked Richie James. But I can't fight you on any of them. Yeah. I think they're all good riddance, over and out, Throw them in and make a trade and try to throw them in, making it seems like you add something, but you're really not. You're going to cut them anyway.
Well, we talk every week about players you should be adding. I thought it was probably time to talk about some players we're going to be dropping. Every time we add Matt Breida, Tank Dell, or Craig Reynolds, we've got to drop somebody from our roster. Sometimes those decisions are very difficult with these players that we've mentioned.
It was a loaded roster, but I dropped Chase Claypool this week.
I've seen him dropped in other leagues as well. So
I know he scored. But
people are moving on. Yeah. That is going to do it for today's show. Please make sure you download and subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. Remember to follow the show at Locked On Dynasty. Follow Matt at Williamson NFL. And I'm Ryan, MC23. We'll be back next time with more Locked On Dynasty.